What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Novichenko Whips YouTube channel. Today I wanted to do kind of maybe another video or a second video on MAF scaling and just taking a look at how you can maybe fine-tune your car. For my example, using open source software and a couple MAF scaling tools to see how you can get your car maybe diagnosed, maybe some issues fixed, and pinpoint, some refinement in the tune. For example, this tune I'm kind of working on off of logs and a former tune. The car is not located near me, so it's kind of a remote tune. I can't say this is my most favorite thing to do because, again, I like to see and hear and feel the car to get a better idea of what's going on, get my hands on it to see if there are vacuum leaks, air leaks, misfires, literally lay eyes and hands on the car. But for example, here I'm working with someone that has a 2008 STI. They do have an IAG block on the car, and for example, it seems like the car has a tune already on it that's been shared with me, but the owner said it's running a little bit rough. I'm sure this will be kind of a twofold fix or resolution. A lot of issues on the Subarus just occur because of vacuum leaks. The smallest vacuum leak could throw off, for example, the way your car runs. The owner did do quite a bit of idle and kind of cruising logging for me and shared the log with me. I'm happy that he monitored all the 4 cylinders for roughness, and he mentioned this as well, that one of his cylinders was causing or having a misfire. And scrolling down this log, I believe I saw that, especially this column here, and so he said he's resolving that. At a quick glance on the very left hand side, I do see certain corrections being made in the log, pretty much air fuel corrections being made by the ECU. Idling, it's not drastic, but driving, I see it jump out, within the range of 5 to 15% here and there. And I've shown in a former video, there's a really nice way to do your MAF rescale if you can log all the necessary parameters. For example, here's the tune. I have the open loop, primary open loop fueling map open. You need to copy that, which I've already done. And using the MAF scaling tool available online, you go to vimsh.github.io MAF scaling. You'll be able to download this awesome tool. Pretty much invaluable for helping tune. So you're gonna put in your fueling table, save that. Currently we're looking at closed loop because the owner was just idling and putting around. So you can see it's kind of the lower RPMs and lower load area. I copied also at the top here the current MAF scaling table. And then of course I loaded the log, the whole log. When you load the log, just make sure you take the correct parameters or the correct data and plug it into the correct parts of what this program looks at. And so when I ran the program, you could see all the hits we got for the various AFR averages. Some places it was a little red, green, yada yada, and then you see the number of counts. It's interesting that the most counts was at around like 800 RPM. The correction wasn't huge. It was at 14.58 instead of the desired most likely 14.7. But here is the pretty much corrected MAF scaling graph. And if I hit current, you can see the red line is the former. So just initially, the graph is not horrible. There's a little bit of fluctuation, and I presume if we dial in this area a little better, and the owner's able to do a little bit of wide open throttle driving without any misfires, this will hopefully smooth itself out. But in general, I think sometimes roughnesses in this graph could indicate, like a physical air leak of some sort. With these cars in tuning and all the maps and graphs, I like to focus on how smooth transitions are. Doesn't mean you can't transition quickly, but again, these are not bad. They're pretty smooth. If you had like jaggedy up and down lines, you would absolutely feel that while driving your car. But from the logs that we have, it's indicating to me, at least interestingly, that, this is the correction we need to make to the MAF scaling. At the car reading a voltage of 2.25 on the MAF, we want it to calculate, around 25 grams per second of air. And we're going to grab that, grab this whole result, copy for ROM Raider, and edit, paste. And so the only major corrections were around 1.5 to 1.8 volts, and we cooled it off, or took some off, from 1.8 to 2.4. That should, even small changes like this can be felt when you're under light load. I'm not going to mess too much with the fueling table, although it could be smoothed out in the middle section. We'll probably try to work out things here and see how the car behaves step by step. So for a lot of this map, I'm looking at it for the first time along with you, so I'm not necessarily in-depth, well-versed at all the ins and outs of it. But what I did do before starting to record here, I took a quick look at just in general what the base tune was looking at for boost. The boost was pretty conservative, maybe stock-ish, just trying to figure out this car at first. But you can see where I have the blue squares. For some reason, the previous tuner had set almost like this 14.5 all throughout here. And I get it, they were trying to probably get the car up to boost in these areas when there's like partial throttle or half throttle. But I think keeping it smooth with the smooth transitions for now will be beneficial, especially trying to get the car at like very mild boost, or near zero boost, zero vacuum, and all those conditions. And then we can work our way up. Very similarly, I kind of tried to smooth out the initial wastegate values just to make sure everything felt as smooth as possible. What else am I going to look at? I'm going to look at their closed loop fueling target. Don't need that. The delay is pretty small, which is fine. The fuel safe stuff I don't care for as much. Trying to see various years of ECUs have this in a different place. But I'll try to see if I can set the closed loop target to exactly 14.7. Some of the cars from factory, they have it set to like a 14.4, 14.5. But we want to be conscious of fuel economy. Let's check the injectors. Looks like they're stock. In the log, I didn't see any knock events, which is good. Let's take a look at the timing that's been kind of drafted out here. Not crazy aggressive timing, especially as we get up higher in the load here. Looks like towards red line, 17 degrees. And then let me see if they are allowing some correction. This one's a little bit all over the place. I might smooth out some of these values. So instead of it jumping from 6 to 3 to 5 to 3 to 5 to 3 to 4, I might make it more gradual, just to not kind of jar the car. And then we might just make some small adjustments here and there. We'll have to get back at you with another round of logs and a revision and see what the owner says, how the car feels. Thanks. What's up, everybody? Looks like we are back a few days later. The owner mentioned that a lot of the few stumbles that he's had have been resolved. I've had one revision so far. Pretty much what I've done, to quickly summarize, is smoothed out the fueling map in those areas. And let's see, so the owner, I asked him to make sure he's logging a few extra parameters, including the instant feedback knock. You want to see all that. We're getting towards the driving where you're getting into a little bit of boost, but not full throttle yet, or wide open throttle yet, because we want to make sure everything is still nice and safe. Scanning there's nothing that's concerning in terms of knock. Just taking a look. See a -1, -1.4 here and there for the knock correction on timing. That's not a big deal. If I see anything like a -2 or more, that's where I pay closer attention. It's kind of a tuner rule of thumb. It could be phantom knock, so on and so forth. So I'm seeing just every here and there like a -1, -1.4. It's a really low load, and that's why for me it kind of doesn't ring a bell too much. Mostly under actual load is where you would be concerned with knock. Pretty good long log. What we're going to do is enter this into our MAF scaling tool and see what it gets us this time with the adjustments in the higher, hopefully higher RPM bands. So last revision that I didn't record, I made some smoother adjustments in the fueling table, and then we've been revisiting the MAF scaling. Again, this MAF scaling graph is not the smoothest. Could be a couple factors to this. The 08 and higher, I believe WRXs and STIs had this thing with like a fueling stumble, and Subaru knew about it. And what they did was added this engine load compensation table at cruise and this engine load compensation table at, let's say, non-cruise. And so what it does is at certain RPM bands, it wants the engine to think that it's actually at a higher or lower load depending on the calculation of like instant fueling and stuff. So I adjusted the map or the math scaling, but then I'm going to ask the owner to give me some more logs, and we're going to start trying to attack this here and see what we can get out of that to smooth out any stumbles and stuff like that. If you're trying to do the same thing on your car, the way to do that is to go on the load comps section of the math scaling tool. You will, let's say, copy one of the load comp tables, paste it right there. Then you're going to load the log that you run. The log, usefully, all the data is pretty much the same as what you use for like a closed loop or open loop math scaling. Then you hit the go button, and technically you get a new table out of it. Sometimes if all the values are just hugely different, I'd probably go for trying to get a log with a lot more data in it. This one here, most of the stuff seems like it's evened out. Still, I see some jumps here and there, so I'll ask for fresh logs to make sure that we don't get a crazy amount of difference. But what you can see is the percent corrections that have been made and the correction counts. Hopefully this helps. Then you would you would copy your new values and then put them back in that table, go drive, do more logging. At that point, I wouldn't be editing both the math and the compensation tables. You want to kind of have one factor or one variable at a time. So in case you're trying to change the math values and rescale it while you try to do these comp tables, it doesn't really work out nice. So first I'd work on trying to get the math dialed in and then work a little bit with the comp tables. Enjoy. It's been a couple days. I've gotten more logs back from Robert and his 2008 STI. I've been scanning through the logs. It looks like Robert was able to get me a couple 100% throttle, maybe partial pulls. By the looks of it, the map settings, since the 2008 STI has 3 driving modes: intelligent, sport, sport sharp. Looking at the map, I think he only hit around 9 psi boost, right under 10, and it looks like he was driving in intelligent mode, most likely. It also looked like he had some instant feedback knock, just the negative 1.4, which is not too concerning, but it does look like it took the fuel mixture a little while to get to the desired like 11.5 or around the 11.5, which is what you want when you are kind of in the, you know, definitely 10 psi and up area. So we'll be taking a look at that in the map. Something I wanted to look at On the newer Subarus and of course the STIs that have the driving modes, there's 3 drive-by-wire maps for these intelligent, sport, and sport sharp. The way these are set up is they have an accelerator pedal angle position at the top, and then they have what's called like a engine speed on the left hand side, and then the value inside of these is like the requested torque, and you put a number in there. The number really varies, and what that number controls is like the desired boost. So you can see that they reuse that requested torque value on the boost or target boost table. So for example, in intelligent mode, only for an instant do they request 350, which is like 12 psi, but of course it never hits that, because for the majority of the table it's requesting like 290, 260, 300 at one point. So that's why we were only seeing like that 9 psi or so. Of course in sport sharp, and if we dial it in correctly, right, you would see more, kind of like that desired 15. Something that I want to do is, I had a 2008 STI myself actually, and I spent quite a bit of time dialing in these drive-by-wire tables and I think my car felt great, like very smooth on low throttle application, and then the power came on really nicely and smoothly when you got on it, pretty much in all 3 maps. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go open that and probably copy paste it for Robert and see how he likes it. Hopefully it'll make his car come a little bit more alive after these changes, and we can compare side to side. So let's say this top left is for Robert's tune, and let's go get the drive-by-wire intelligent from my former tune. What you'll see is, yep, on my tune I was a little more aggressive. I was requesting 380 instead of like the factory 340 at one place. If we look here, requesting 380 is kind of the max. So I'm gonna guess that in my tune, when I was working, it had the requested torque table went up much higher. It went up to, let's see, my car, Sport Sharp, it went up to 500. So I'm sure the scaling was a little bit different. And if we can confirm that, yeah. So in my car, when I had that, the requested torque went from 100 to 500 in the boost map. Whereas for his car, it goes, I think, up to 380. I guess I could rescale that if I wanted. I think that requested torque, those requested torque numbers are reused in a couple places, like in the wastegate, max and min value wastegate, and a couple other places. So I'll just work to maybe copy over my numbers in reference to what he has, and it should overall just make the car feel a lot smoother and more responsive on throttle. I'll make some edits and I'll catch you here in a minute. Another couple comments in general about why the boost may have been a bit low is just there's a very conservative initial and max wastegate duty setup for the current map. At the top you see the one I have for Robert's car, and the bottom this is from my STI back in the day. What I'm going to do is use, of course, the style that I had on my STI, but I'm probably gonna, of course, not give it the full like 70% at full wide open throttle. We're going to be a little bit more conservative, but we are going to give more than what we see currently for Robert's car, which is around 25%. So let me adjust that and show you what it looks like. A useful tool, of course, if you want to blend things and to what they call interpolate. You select a section, you can either vertical or in horizontal interpolate, so it'll, you know, smoothly ramp up between some values. Let's say you wanted to go from 0 to 100, you will select and it will carefully interpolate, you know, equal spacing or whatever you want to call it between each value. Quick update here on that. So again, I've kind of just made it a little more spicy, if you want to call it, on the initial wastegate. Let's look at the max wastegate table for Robertson. So it's actually not bad. There's some more aggressive numbers there. Sorry, I'm gonna bring that back. That's from my former car. Max wastegate for Robert's car, I'll put at the top. So I think we can do a little better. We're gonna set this to like the 40 range, since the initial we set at least at wide open throttle to like 35. You don't want a huge gap between your lower bound and upper bound, so you don't want your boost fluctuating up and down. So you really want to dial it into, I think, within 5-10% with, you know, driving and going about trying to get your hit your target boost without crazy fluctuation. So we're gonna do this left side here real quick. Here's what that looks like. Looks pretty smooth. Overall, car should feel smooth coming on boost with the wastegate control. All right, last thing for this video that I want to talk about is, again, just checking if you see feedback knock. I guess if you just want to ensure that it doesn't happen so that you're as safe as possible, you could take a look in the map at that load range and the RPM you were at and see what like max ignition timing you were at. So by the looks of it here, the load was at around 2.25, 2.22, and then as it climbed in the RPM band, it went maybe slightly lower. I keep seeing that he was still in it for the throttle. Actually, no, I think lifted right around here. I don't know what this 100 stands for here, but by the looks of it, this is boost and it ended here. So as the boost goes down, of course, your timing climbs back up. But rule of thumb, 15-ish degrees is pretty conservative. 20 degrees is pretty spicy for, let's say, boost. Because we're only at like 9 pounds, this 17-ish degrees is okay. I'm gonna check this area in the map for the fuel mixture just to make sure we're not floating around 11.7, 11.6. We wanna be at a nice, probably slightly richer mixture just for tuning purposes, especially with remote tuning. And so I'm gonna check that out and just maybe revisit the timing table where the ignition timing is and see if anything's kind of choppy there to see why this could be happening. Because again, we were at 17.5, then it dropped to 15, then it back to 17. We want to make sure that's as smooth as possible when you're getting on the throttle. Okay, so where I saw some, let's say, knock, We were at around 4,000 RPM and like the 2.2 load. Initially here, the mixture was like right under 12. So what I've done is just everywhere at 2 or above, I've just added a bit more fuel. 11.47, 11.4 in some of these spots. Once you get into the higher RPMs is fine. Pretty much what I'm looking for is that we want to stay nice and rich enough to maybe help mitigate any kind of knock. We're also going to take a look at the timing here in a second. Rule of thumb, Subarus kind of need a little help with the fuel mixture when you're loading it up. Some other boosted cars don't need as much fuel so soon once you hit boost, but it's just kind of a given with the Subis. You want to make sure you're rich enough to help mitigate knock, and I guess a little bit richer mixture more or less helps with cooling the cylinder walls. Cool. So we've put that in, saved her out, and then I'm gonna look at timing advance, also around that 4,000 mark, around 2.2. It is interesting, a lot of tunes have this kind of a rise and then a fall and then like dips. And so I'm almost certain that the reason there was some knock was just in the fluctuation of timing as you climb the RPM band and let's say increase load. Yeah, the load was around 2.2 because the boost stayed the same, but it climbed to 13, then goes back down to 12, and then it spikes to 17. That's kind of like a, and so I'm going to smooth this out. Probably just, instead of having a drop, maybe lower this value slightly, but make sure the climb is, fairly smooth. So to speak, you wouldn't have lower timing than the value above it, but you'd want this climb in timing to be smoothed out. And then we'll see in the following logs if that helps resolve things. Let's see. That should be good. Here I might dip it down a little bit. And so, of course, if you're tuning your own car, you can definitely fine tune the timing quite a bit. You can almost tune forever to try and make sure things are nice and smooth there. Of course, there's lots of these knock correction advance max tables. Some tuners like to zero these out completely. I like to use them just overall because it allows the engine to add a bit of timing where it's happy. I think it's also important to just take a look at the primary table and this table and make sure nothing adds up to some wild value with crazy fluctuations. So let's say I would just go over these and see like that there's no value where the deviation or the difference or the delta is like 5 degrees or more. I would just like to see more smooth values. I'm not sure why, let's say Subaru from factory did a lot of different numbers living side by side in these maps, because sometimes cars knock just because you're asking for a completely wildly different amount of timing right by each other. And I've seen that in some places adding timing to where it dipped made the knock go away. So give that a try as well. It's not always, lowering the timing doesn't always fix the issue. Oddly, I've noticed that. We'll send this over to Robert and hopefully get him running and enjoying his car here for the summer.
Hope these couple tips helped. Take care.